So let's start. First of all, Sangay Tshering. Again, Sangay is the president of the Loden Foundation, and he's going to introduce you to Loden Tewa, Loden's new program, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zoltan. Thank you for falling in love with Bhutan, and then falling in love with Loden Foundation. And Rabsel and I got in last night on different timings. And earlier today in the morning, I fell in love with Budapest. Such connections, being physically here, though we have virtually been connected, but being physically present in a place definitely gives a lot of sense of place and a sense of identity. Because you asked the question of values and identity, I'm trying to relate it here. I'm a tech founder. I started my entrepreneurial journey around 2010. I bumped into Loden Foundation in the year, I started my company in 2008, sorry. I met Loden Foundation in the year 2010, started a social enterprise, it was called Mops and Condoms, a cleaning service agency. The reason being, it was a social enterprise. I knew that I would not be making a lot of money running it, but the reason being, young Bhutanese at that point could not necessarily get a job. They could not necessarily make any earnings. So they were very dependent. You needed to buy a mobile phone, you'd wait for your parents' paycheck to actually get paid. So young people are not necessarily empowered. There's also this mental block of Bhutanese not wanting to do menial jobs. I guess it's applicable in a lot of places. But then again, people taking on handyman jobs is not necessarily really respected. So these were some initiatives that I was trying to break into the Bhutanese the mindset. And I gave my shot for 3 years. It was really tiring, but I learned a lot. I shut down the business. I repaid Loden Foundation, and that was the start of my journey with Loden Foundation. Fast forward 2019, I became a board of trustee. I also figured that as much as there are entrepreneurs, not necessarily everybody steps up to become an ecosystem builder. It takes a little more to be an ecosystem builder. So for the past 3 years, I've actually put a pause on my founder's journey. I've decided to take on the role of an ecosystem builder and play this role. I know the future is always exciting. We have Gelephu Mindfulness sitting next. But I'd like to take a walk in the past and drive you through what is Bhutan, give a little bit of context, and then later on we see where Bhutan is heading. So Kuzu Zangpola. We were trying to learn how to greet, but we wanted to get it, it was a little difficult for me to share, so I'll share the Zonka greeting here, Kuzu Zangpola. Sorry. Few of you shared about having visited Bhutan. Half of you here. So this is the Bhutan you know. Lush green mountains, the Zong, the fortress, identity, and how Bhutanese is. And in most cases, Bhutan is also seen with prayer flags and monks. But this is Bhutan now. This is Thimphu. A lot has changed. Loden is 26 years old, and over the 26 years, we have seen a lot of changes. But then again, the tangible aspect, the physical aspect, the structures have changed. But then again, some things remain really intact. I have a picture here. It's of small stupas. A Bhutanese, even me, I'm not a very religious person, but what I'll end up doing is whenever I reach up to a high mountain pass, I'll end up making these stupas. We believe mountaintops are sacred, thus mountaineering is pretty much banned in Bhutan. There was a question about, do we have to really conquer everything? Do mankind have to conquer and submit every mountain that you see? So these were discussions that happened. And there was this very spiritual, cultural discussion around mountaintops are sacred. So let's keep it sacred. So we banned mountaineering. But then again, the story here is it's not just a spiritual belief or a cultural belief, but the translation of these beliefs into actual law. And that's where the constitution basically says Bhutan needs to be covered in forest, 60% at least for times to come. And then we will ban mountaineering. So this is a perfect combination of spiritual beliefs into lawmaking in the country. And this is one of the few examples that's actually been considered, and there's more. But we live our everyday lives. Uh, children are going to school. We have the great songs in the background, and a lot has changed in Bhutan. That's the story that I'd like to present now. This is Loden Foundation. Started with a 50 pound in the UK. The founder is Dr. Karma Pinso. He was given 50 pounds to support a student in Bhutan. That happens to be that young lady there. Over the past 26 years, it has had a ripple effect where we have supported numerous students go to colleges. We have also supported, though education is free in Bhutan, we have supported students within Bhutan who needs assistance. Loden also championed starting the early learning centers in Bhutan, the ECCD programs in Bhutan, before the government actually mainstreamed it. Now the royal government of Bhutan has actually mainstreamed the projects, and we have taken a back seat. In fact, we have handed 2 of our ECCDs to the government and still operating 3. We have the Loden Culture Program. Again, for most of you who've been there and through my presentation, you'll realize that, okay, culture is pretty much intact. The tangible aspect of culture is documented, is protected, it's saved, but the intangible culture heritage. And Bhutan is a very oral society, a lot of things not necessarily documented. Over the course of time, we have digitized 5 million pages of manuscripts, more than 3,000 hours of audiovisual content, and we have made a lot of publications. So now we have at Loden the head, the heart, and the hand. So we believe the head is the education program, the heart being very much in alignment with culture, and then the hand being the entrepreneurial program. It's very action-oriented. And these 3 needs to be aligned, the head, heart, and the hand. Now my focus here today would be to talk about Loden Entrepreneurship Program. We have, the program is 16 years old, started in 2008. Over the course of 17 years, we've been able to raise about 1.5 million US dollars. The idea is the fundraise, which is mostly donations, was being used as a revolving fund. And the same fund has been recycled twice, some even thrice, because it gets repaid. And we've been able to create an impact, and this revolving fund of $1.5 million has actually become $2.5 million now. We've been able to seed finance 320 businesses in Bhutan, spread all across Bhutan. 110 of them are women founders. And I would share that we've been able to create an employment to about 1,000 people. But then again, now the future kicks in. GNH is a balancing act. The 4 pillars, basic 4 pillars, if I break it down, the culture component, we have the environment, we have the governance part, and a lot of things have been set right. We have culture intact, we have the environment intact, we have good governance led by the king and a democratic government, everything is in place. But then again, at this point, we are feeling that we need to have a new development paradigm, an economic shift. This is not a concept, it's in reality now. And to give context again, investments in Bhutan are not necessarily the most promoted up until now. There is no venture fund specifically designated or been created in Bhutan. We have been part of a lot of business accelerator programs in Bhutan, but not necessarily had even one single accelerator program championed by Bhutan. So this is our attempt. We have a team where the 3 of us on the top Karma Pinso, Jaratadi, Sangay, we are the board members of the Loden Foundation. We sit on the council of Loden Tewa, and we have the CEO, Tilachorin, join us. We also have advisory committee members, friends who have supported us in the formation of Loden Tewa, and we look forward to adding some of you here. And we have the Loden Tewa office. So what's unique about Tewa? With the deep integration in the ecosystem being run for the entrepreneurs, by the entrepreneurs, with cultural alignment and social impact, and the proven legacy network that Loden has, rooted in deep Bhutanese values, that's Loden Tewa. Our model is we have an accelerator program, and we have a venture fund for impact. In the first cohort, we will be accelerating 8 entrepreneurs. Now you must be wondering, what are the type of profiles, what are the type of entrepreneurs that Bhutan has to offer? We have Chandrika. She is a Bhutanese designer. I've known her for about a decade now. She was working for a bank, decided to pursue her passion. She came to Loden Foundation, we seed financed her, and now she makes Bhutanese textiles. She lives in between Bhutan and Australia, and prior to her move to Australia, her business was not necessarily growing in Bhutan. But after moving to Australia, she's actually had a big catapult effect in growing her business. We have Sharab here. Sharab here is a bright young Bhutanese, a graduate from Brown University. He actually got a scholarship for being a high-performing student. He graduated from Brown University. He could have chosen to go anywhere in the world and work, but he decided to come back to Popjika. He was also supported by the Society Switzerland Bhutan, which is the Friendship Association of Switzerland. Last year, 3 of them, and Sharab included, spent about 3 months in the Swiss Alps learning how to make cheese. After learning how to make cheese, he came back to Bhutan, and it has impacted his small holder farmer groups. It has increased from 39 to 90 of them, actually. The introduction of a single product can actually impact his business. Similarly, we have Tilinamge. He works with women cooperatives. The women groups in rural parts of Bhutan that he works with grows organic edible flowers. Tile also, again, I think it's beyond just investment, but the network and the friendship that we have been able to garner with the Society of Switzerland Bhutan also gave him a market in the network and to a whole new place. Yima is not a Loden entrepreneur. She is a women tech founder, the first entertainment over-the-top streaming platform. Yima was a TV personality, a journalist who actually turned into an entrepreneur. And we have many more. We have the first chocolatier in our portfolio, Yiga Chocolate. Loden has also seed financed a drone company in Bhutan, which is doing amazing work from survey to volumetric study of solid waste. And we have Karma Yentin, which Zoltan keeps mentioning. He started the first waste transfer facility in Bhutan. It was very difficult for Bhutan or concerned agencies to actually establish the first waste transfer facility. So a social entrepreneur could not necessarily wait for the waste transfer facility to come. So he decided to take on as a challenge on himself to raise financing to actually start the first waste transfer facility for solid waste, municipal waste in Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan. And he, to a certain extent, he's grown. He's been able to unlock capital from a big project, a World Bank project of $1 million. But then again, that injection is not necessarily able to resolve a lot of the municipal solid waste issues in the capital city. So 4 reasons to believe in ambitious Bhutanese entrepreneurs. The evolving entrepreneurial landscape, the generation that I grew up in. My mother and father used to tell me that you're going to school and you're going to get a job. you're going to wear a very, this is a phrase they would use. This is called a lage, and we expect your lage to be clean all the time, white, fresh and crisp. So that was the type of ideas or narratives that used to happen at every Bhutanese home, sitting around the table eating dinner. A few of us decided not to go on that road. Was I the smartest student? No. But could I get into a bureaucratic job, into a nice, secure place? I could have. But we decided to go a different way. And there is more. The prospect of accelerated economic growth. We have set big tasks for Bhutan. I think the GMC, the fact that it has been put in place and the paradigm shift that has taken, even the royal government of Bhutan, the rest of Bhutan has actually developed a development paradigm which is called 10x, tenfold economic development by the year 2050. That gives a lot of hope to the entrepreneurial community. The rise of innovative startups. My journey, having worked with a lot of social ventures in Bhutan, social enterprises, is it's very difficult sometimes to tell a Bhutanese how to make business, how to make money out of the business. The social inclination towards starting the enterprises is enterprise as a service, but not necessarily enterprise to make money. And the repatriating talent pool. Maybe you're aware, maybe not. A major chunk of the Bhutanese population started leaving Bhutan over the past few years. And while Bhutan was actually banking on the social dividend that this generation was going to produce. People from the age group of 18 up till 40, major chunk of them leaving Bhutan. But the entrepreneurial community actually sees it as an opportunity. And now the trend is most of them are returning back to Bhutan. And up until the 1970s, Bhutan was into a state of self-imposed isolation. So we really cut ourselves from the rest of the world. It has also got to a point where it's like an echo chamber, Bhutanese not necessarily thinking beyond. So the repatriating talent pool will definitely open Bhutan up. So we have a timeline. We have made the announcements for the cohort. By the end of September, the application deadline hits. The accelerator program happens in the first quarter of 2026. We're trying to do fundraising of $2.1 million by the end of 2026. And the investment deployment to the cohort actually happens in the second quarter of 2026. This is the fundraising goals. $2.1 million. We have secured $212,000. We have also got strong commitment for up to 30% of what we require. And I'd like to share that though the pitch was, in comparison to the whole of Bhutan looked pretty small. I personally feel that Bhutan, a population of 750,000, Loden Foundation in its journey of 25 years, securing a fund of 1.5 million, and over a period of 16 years, being able to actually have an impact and recycle the fund up to $2.5 million, and being able to create a community of 320 entrepreneurs. These entrepreneurs at the moment are the mentors, in a way, I'll borrow your word, the heroes in the Bhutanese community. As much as Gelephu Mindfulness City is going its way, at Loden Foundation, at Loden Tewa, we feel that as Bhutanese entrepreneurs, we have a role to play in the Gelephu Mindfulness City. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So, our next talk is about Gelephu Mindfulness City and about the future. So, Rabsel Dorji, as I said, is the Chief of Communications at the GMC. And as well, because we are talking about enterprises today, as far as I know, you've ventured a few businesses in your life. So maybe you want to just share a few information about that. But nevertheless, the floor is yours.
Jó estét, Kuzuzangpola. It's a It's a pleasure to be here. It's a privilege to be able to present to you the vision of the Gelephu Mindfulness City. And I was just thinking that even as I stand here in Budapest, a city where history and innovation kind of meet at the Danube River, it reminds me of what we're doing and what we're building in Bhutan, in the Gelephu Mindfulness City, to build a place where tradition and modernity will also flow with the same vibration and the same harmony. And that's exactly what the vision of the Gelephu Mindfulness City is. It's a royal vision. It's a vision of His Majesty, the King of Bhutan, to build what we call a special administrative region in the south central part of the country. I'll talk about that a bit more later. To really leverage the opportunities that we foresee for Bhutan, for the larger South Asian region's growth, and really in many ways to fundamentally transform the very future potential of Bhutan. That's what the vision of the Gelephu Mindfulness City is. So when you think of Bhutan, this is usually the visuals. You think of this very good-looking king, this very charming wife. You think of a country of Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism practice, a country of heritage and culture, a country of gross national happiness. We take happiness very seriously, almost as much as the Hungarians take paprika, I think. I walked around today, paprika everywhere. So we take happiness quite seriously. And it's a carbon negative country, the first carbon negative country in the world. And so this is the image of Bhutan, the reputation, the soft power that we have in many ways. As a small country, we don't have too many resources, but we have very strong soft power, very strong reputation. Ours is a country of values. It's a values-based society. And all of this is true. But as Sangay mentioned in his previous presentation, Bhutan is also young. Bhutan is also bold. Bhutan is innovation now. Bhutan is dynamic. Bhutan is looking at resilience. Bhutan is ready to do business. And that's what the GMC is about as well. We want to showcase this other facet of Bhutan, this young, resilient, innovative Bhutan. And that's what the GMC will do as well. This is such an important slide for me because when I was growing up in Bhutan, and for many of our previous generations, when we thought of ourselves on the map, when we thought of our identity, it was one of smallness. We used to always describe ourselves as a small, landlocked Himalayan kingdom, sandwiched between the two giants of China and India. And there was this sense of vulnerability. There was this sense of smallness. And that was good for us in the sense of being pragmatic about how we approach. But with the GMC, with His Majesty the King, there is a paradigm shift now. We're not just looking north and south, we're starting to look east and west. We're starting to zoom out of this map. And we're reinventing ourselves constantly. And when we look at ourselves in the map now, suddenly we realize that instead of a place of smallness and instead of an identity of vulnerability, we now see opportunity. Opportunity because Bhutan is basically strategically at this center of this land economic corridor that connects all the way from the Middle East to South Asia and Southeast Asia. And we believe that, and we foresee that South Asia is going to see this huge economic growth within the next 5 years, 10 years. And if we play our cards right in Bhutan, we will unlock these opportunities. We'll unlock these economic opportunities. And so the GMC has in many ways been able to redefine our identity, who we think of ourselves. Even though we're small, we punch above our weight. And so now Bhutan is about opportunities. It's no longer about the vulnerabilities and the smallness. And that's also what the GMC is going to do and has already done. And so because of that, we will take advantage of what we're good at, what our values are, what our ethos are. We're going to take advantage of our green energy, our sustainable resources. in my opinion, most importantly, our very strong, inspiring, enlightened leadership with His Majesty the King. And all of that to build a city that is very Bhutanese in characteristic, one that is spiritually mindful, economically prosperous, environmentally sustainable. So how do we do that? What gives us this confidence, this gumption, this ambition to be able to do that? Well, it goes back to leadership. His Majesty has outlined something called the Diamond Strategy for the Gelephu Mindfulness City. And this is quite interesting, maybe perhaps for legal scholars. We are establishing what we call a one country, two systems. We're establishing what we call a special administrative region. And by being able to create a special administrative region, that means we're able to create a space that has autonomy in this executive powers, autonomy in its legislative powers, and a fully independent judicial system. One country, but two systems. In a way, functionally, almost a whole nother country. For those of you who are of age, I don't know if you remember, I used to play something called SimCity before when I was young. I used to play on my computer and build a whole new city. We're able to do that in Bhutan. But we're not just playing the infrastructure, urban development, hardware of a city. We are also building the software, the operating system. We're also thinking about what governance structures will look like. What kind of education system do we want? What kind of health system do we want? What kind of laws will we adopt from scratch? The GMC is completely being built from scratch. It's a sandbox initiative. It's a place for ideation. It's a place for testing out new things. I like to say that GMC is a place where we can show you what Bhutan could look like. And there is a strategy behind that. The idea is that with the GMC as a sandbox, as a test bed, as a lab for experimentation, we will innovate, we will try out whatever we need to do. We will bring whatever laws, whatever policies, whatever regulatory frameworks, and we will try out new things in the GMC. And we can do that because we will move much faster. Our governance structure is more agile. We will iterate like a business would, like a startup would. And the lessons of the GMC through its successes, but also through some of its failures, will then inform Bhutan's larger transformation and reinvention. And back to the first question around how do we have this type of development that preserves our values and preserves our culture and our identity. That's what the one country, two system does. That's what a special administrative does. That's what the GMC does. Because GMC will be able to take on those risks. And GMC will be able to then inform Bhutan's larger transformation while preserving its values because it's a sandbox. And so in Bhutan, I spend a lot of time on this particular slide because it's very important for us Bhutanese to understand why we are building the GMC. It's a tool to a larger end. It's a means to a larger end. It's a tool that we're using to try out, to experiment, so that Bhutan can perform its own transformation while preserving its identity. And so as you can see, it's a diamond strategy. It has a divergence for 20 years and a convergence for 20 years. So it's time-bound. There are other SARs in the world. There's two specifically. But in Bhutan, it's by design. We are designing the special administrative region, and it is time-bound. We know that after 40 years, the GMC must come back into the fold of Bhutan. That means that for 40 years, the GMC and Bhutan will have its own systems, its own regulatory frameworks, its own policies, its own rate of development, its own culture. But during that time, the GMC and Bhutan must have a very strong feedback loop. There must be conversations between Bhutan and GMC all the time so that there is learning happening on both sides. And so this can, and I can spend a lot of time probably on this slide, but this is how the structure of the GMC is being designed. And we're able to do that because there is a certain level of trust with the leadership. His Majesty the King can one day announce to his people, hey, let's look at building a whole new system. And a month later, with the support of the Prime Minister and the opposition and all the members of parliament and the private sector and the media and the Bhutanese diaspora, every stakeholder, with the support of his people, he's able to come and make this a reality. And so through the Royal Charter, the GMC already exists as a special administrative region. This is not a thought experiment. This is not a proof of concept. This is not theoretical, conceptual, academic. This is very much in action. We already have a special administrative region in Bhutan. It already exists. And because it already exists, it means that we can already start adopting the laws that we want. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking around and we're realizing that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just pick and choose what we want from the world. And so that's what we've done. We've looked around and we've said, we really like what Singapore does for commercial regulations. So we adopt and we adapt Singaporean commercial law. We looked at the Middle East and we said, we like Abu Dhabi global markets for financial and digital assets. So we adopt and we adapt it to the Bhutanese GMC interest. And we will continue to do that. We should look around the world. We're studying as we speak every single regulation to see what we can bring to GMC. Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what is familiar to investors. Let's look at what is good, high standards, gold standards, and we can bring that to GMC. But we'll do that while maintaining what Bhutan is good at, what is close to our values. And that means we will continue to keep the GMC very green, just like Bhutan. Bhutan is 70% forest cover, 60% mandated through the constitution. The GMC will actually be 70% forest cover. The GMC will be very clean as well. We'll ensure that the air that you breathe and the water that you drink is Himalayan quality. GMC will be extremely safe, and this is very important. This is one of the differentiating factors that Bhutan brings. For some of you who are aware or who have been to South Asia, this is an entire region that historically is characterized by a lot of instability, upheavals, pollution, distrust. And within this region of South Asia stands Bhutan and GMC as a place of trust, people that you can rely on, a culture and a society that is values-based. And that becomes, as small as we may be, a differentiating factor. And so GMC will continue to be extremely safe and, of course, happy. We will hopefully continue to be happy. By most metrics, by any metrics, we're the happiest nation in South Asia at the least. Our development philosophy will continue to be rooted on this paradigm of cross-national happiness. And later we can discuss about how that works. But GMC will continue to be underpinned by the values of cross-national happiness. In fact, what I like to say is that it is natural for a country of cross-national happiness to give birth to the city of mindfulness. It's like a mother and a child. The DNA and the value systems remain the same, but the personality is different. GMC is this new baby looking forward, but guided by the values of its mother. And so it's based in the south central part of Bhutan. You can see the slight red demarcation. It's currently about 2,600 square kilometers, looking to grow about 4,000 square kilometers. At this stage, we are already 2 times the size of Hong Kong, 3 times the size of Singapore. It's bookended by 2 nature reserves, very green. It's right across the border from India. So access to South Asia is right across the border. We're going to build a lot of infrastructure. We need to build better roads. We need to build connectivity through railway. We're already building an international airport. We have a domestic airport, which we are extending it into an international airport, so that Sangay and I don't have to go through multiple layers of stopovers. We can fly directly to Europe. And we need to make sure that we have all the enabling environments in place. So both the hardware and the software. So not just infrastructure, but also enabling regulations as it differentiates itself not just from larger Bhutan, but the larger South Asia, perhaps the larger world. We've also identified 8 core economic clusters. These are the economies, the industries, the sectors that will drive the GMC. Spiritual. The GMC will be rooted in spirituality. Ours is a Vajrayana Buddhist country. And so we are a space for every lineage within Buddhism to come and have their space over there. A center for every different schools of Buddhism, lineages of Buddhism. This is not just important, this is our identity. This is who we are. It'll also be a space for health and wellness. Bhutan is known as the land of medicinal herbs. There's so much ancient wisdom, traditional medicine in Bhutan. How can we marry that with modern medicine? How can we create integrative medicine? How can we focus on longevity, quality of life? How can we create GMC to be a blue zone, as they say? GMC will be a space for education and knowledge. Over the last 2 weeks in Europe, I've had so many conversations with so many institutes, and I look forward to our meeting tomorrow. Education institutes who see alignment with the work that they're doing. Ethics in business, for example. How can we bring research institutes in GMC? And GMC being able to provide this enabling environment with shared value systems. How can we bring in agri-tech and forestry? Leveraging Bhutan's smart agriculture, carbon negative focus. How can we bring in green energy and tech industries, especially driven by this global demand for AI and compute power? The GMC is going to be completely fueled and powered by renewable, clean, green energy. Hydropower and solar, we're exploring geothermal. And how can we be a hub for finance and digital assets, for wealth management, for family offices? And of course, tourism is the 8th sector that will continue to be a very important driver of our economy, just as it is in Bhutan. But in all of those 8 economic clusters, GMC will be positioned in the trust economy, in the high value economy, something that we can differentiate ourselves from the rest of the region, if not the world. So, aviation and logistics. The airport that we're building is one that will be a game changer, not just for GMC, but for Bhutan. We're looking at a 3-kilometer runway. We're looking at bringing in 1.3 million passengers within 4 years, or at least a capacity of 1.3, growing to 5.5 million, eventually 15 million passengers to the GMC as a hub. They don't all have to be tourists to Bhutan, but we can be a regional hub for aviation as well as for logistics. And we'll create our own airport economy around this international airport. And as I mentioned, the catchment area, the connectivity, the possibilities are endless. For those of you who've been to Bhutan, you know how beautiful the landing is in Paro. It's enthralling. I'm looking forward to going back to Bhutan in a few days because of that landing. But it is also limited because there's visibility issues. There's wind curfews. You can't land after a certain period. You need manual landing. You can't do automatic landing. With the GMC, because it's flat, we have, it's called ILS, Instrument Landing Systems. And that means day and night, rain or shine, we're going to have planes into the GMC. And so the international airport will be completed within the next 4 years. By December 2029, the key infrastructures within GMC will be completed. In fact, within the next 10 years, all the core city services will be ready. I tell the story of my mother who tells me all the time, Rabsel, GMC is for the next generation. We might not see it. And I always tell her, no, Mr. Zoltan, no. You will see the GMC within your lifetime. You'll see it within 5 years, within 10 years, the city will be ready. All the key core economic services are ready. And of course, it will grow. It will continue to mature. We also work with a lot of international partners. We have to be humble enough to know that for a project of this scale and ambition and size, that we can't do this alone. We've never done this before. And so we look to friends from around the world. And this is a slide that I update all the time because the partners keep increasing. Can I bring in some Hungarian friends into this slide? That's what I'm here for. And so whether it is in the architectural world or in economies or in infrastructure, all these elements, we're working with a lot of international expertise, 150 plus so far, full time. But I make sure that they work with Bhutanese team members. So because I look after communications, I work very closely with Teneo. And Teneo has its own experts and a lot of international team members. And I make sure that my young Bhutanese team members are working very closely with them because I want there to be knowledge transfer. I want there to be capacity building, institutional memory. I want them, the young Bhutanese, to be the future leaders of the GMC. And so we work with that design, that there will be a lot of knowledge transfer. So this is how a Bhutanese city will look like. There's no skyscrapers. There's not too many cars. It's very walkable. That's back to your first question again. How do we ensure urban development is done, again, in a Bhutanese manner, in a sustainable manner? Very walkable city, a 15-minute city, as they say, in harmony with its environment, preserving the biodiversity that is the GMC, the 3 endangered species that we have, the elephant corridors that we have, the 101 species of birds that we have. We preserve all of that. But we marry that with modern excellence. We retain the Bhutanese architecture. We want more public transportation systems. We want it to be a very walkable city. I enjoyed my walk today, by the way, in Budapest. And I think there's a lot to learn in GMC. And this is the airport, which has started. The construction has started. It's a modular design. It's built on what they call glulam timber technology. It has solar panel roofs. It's a beautiful design, in my opinion. And this is inside the airport. This is our definition of what an airport should feel like. Not a place of stress. It should be a place of contemplation. A place where you can do some sound healing. You can do some yoga and meditation. And you bring in authentic Bhutanese arts and crafts. This is what this airport is going to look like. So that your first and last impression of the Gelephu Mindfulness City is true and authentic to Bhutan. And the construction started just about 2 months ago. I was on my way to Japan for a conference. And when I heard that the construction was starting, I made my way back. I cut my trip short and I said, I have to be in Gelephu. Why? His Majesty the King himself, Her Majesty the Queen herself, the royal children themselves, the Prime Minister, the opposition, members of our religious bodies, the business community, Bhutanese from all over the country, young Bhutanese and volunteers basically, all congregated together for something called Shabto. Shabto is a Bhutanese word that means manual service, manual labor service. It's something that is deeply ingrained in who we are, this very community-focused approach, this culture of service that we have. How can we contribute to our country? What is nation building for us? Shabto. And so His Majesty and Her Majesty and the royal children stayed in Gelephu to help out with Shabto, day and night. It's not a photo op. They didn't just take a photo and leave. I had to go back to Thimphu the next day, but they stayed back for about a week, every single day. And for us in Bhutan, this is very powerful. This tells us what it means to be Bhutanese, to be able to work together as one big family, to build our future together, to not just be caretakers of our past, but to be builders of our shared future. That's what we were doing in Gelephu. And that was the first time. And His Majesty, as you can imagine, is very busy. And he was working, he came back. And anytime he found some free time, he went back to Gelephu. So we had the second time where we had to do this. And now we're already planning for the third time. And now my emails are flooded because every Bhutanese says, how can I come and provide Shabto? And now I'm getting calls from Australia. And they're saying, we have a few thousands of us who want to come. And so we have a website which is crashing every time because so many Bhutanese are registering. How can we provide Shabto? We're not going to take a dime, a cent from you. We will arrange our own travel, transportation, accommodation. We just want a time and a space to be able to come and help. This is what's happening in Bhutan. This is what happens when you have an inspiring leader, in my opinion. In a world where there is an erosion of trust in leadership at all levels, this is what we have in Bhutan. We have it in abundance. Trust, love in abundance. And this is my last slide. This is my favorite slide, because this is why I believe so strongly that GMC will succeed. Because the GMC is an emanation of the trust and the love, the bond between the king and the people. The fidelity that we have. And because when a strong, true leader comes and says, I have a vision for how our country can move, and you have the entire country backing it, you have all the ingredients for its success. And with the GMC, that's how the journey has started. And so we're here, I'm here right now because I want to invite the world, I want to invite our friends of Bhutan to be able to join, co-create this journey together, to learn from you, to learn from your insights, to share partnerships to how we can build this future for Bhutan, but perhaps even for beyond Bhutan. And so I look forward to that, and I'm extremely, again, grateful for the opportunity to present the GMC. Thank you so much.
So, who has a question?
So first, tough question to Rabsel. I would say that GMC, or Gelephu Mindfulness City, is a project. And you have already appointed managers of the projects, which are mainly Singaporeans. One of them, the man who was responsible for construction of Changi airport, so very experienced man. And now I'm coming to my, it is not a question, it's actually comment and question maybe, because it is a project, and me, I used to work all my life on projects, mainly in India. I spent 10 years in India, as you know. And it was always a must during the project to give project status or project report every month. Because it created the trust you were speaking about between our client and us. And here it should create trust between possible investors, be it financial investors or strategical investors. By financial investors, I mean the investors who put in some form money into the project, and strategical investors who would set up some manufacturing facilities in this special economic region or any service facilities. And the trust is believed when they see the progress of the project. And the progress may be seen only from the project report. And so far, I have seen only some concepts. You presented as well the concept that in 2035, the basic structure should be developed and ready. And it means 10 years are now in front of us. So I would say that maybe it is even advice to you, you should persuade your Singaporean managers to produce the project status or project report. I do not say every month, but quarterly, because the investor believes only when he sees some project. Then he decided to continue with the project. And if he receives the information only once in a year or so the belief may be lost. So it is my humble advice and comment to what you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yaroslav, a dear friend of...
No, Mr. Yaroslav.
Everyone's a Mr. Mr. So the first place I would start is, of course, this is beyond a project. This is a vision for Bhutan. For us, this is nation building. It's deeply important for the very future of our country. And so while this is, of course, in the form of projects, this is something that is very close to us. So we see this in terms of very long term and deeply, for Bhutanese at least, deeply personal. The second aspect is that, yes, our CEO is Singaporean, but our board directors are from many countries. We have people from Japan, we have someone who's an Indian, we have somebody from Australia, we have Singaporeans, but His Majesty the King remains the executive chairman. So His Majesty the King is at the head of what is designed as a corporate structure in a way. We have a board of directors for the Gelephu Mindfulness City. I work personally with Singaporeans, but also with Bhutanese leadership and also with many other nationalities. So the second thing is that. 3, trust is absolutely important. And this is where I think I take your suggestions and your insights based on your own experience. But we should also keep in mind that the Gelephu Mindfulness City is only 1.5 years old. So we announced the Gelephu Mindfulness City only in 2023 December. So if it was a human being right now, we're learning how to crawl and walk. And so we must have some patience. Having said that, I understand that to build trust, you need to share information. And when it comes to partners with GMC, people who believe in the vision from the very beginning, the first movers, the anchor partners, the anchor investors, we have a very vibrant conversations with them. These are people who we know are saying, we completely believe and we're aligned with the vision, and they stepped first to say, we want to be partners. With them, we share that information. My job, of course, in communications is to also share as much information I can share with the rest of our stakeholders. And Bhutanese people will have the same questions. They'll say, we need to know what's happening to the future of our country as well. And if the GMC represents that, we want to have information. And so in many ways, we have to be sensitive, one, to the partners who have shown their belief in the GMC. And there's a certain level of privacy that we must maintain when it comes to engaging with them and sharing information. At the same time, we are very public about the type of information that can go public through a lot of our domestic channels. And so the media, the domestic media of Bhutan is extremely active. And half the time my WhatsApp is filled with their questions and my email is filled with other questions. And so we do engage more. And what we've seen over the last year till now is an increase in the type, in the level, and the detail of information that we share. But in the beginning, we didn't want to go out and share all information because we had to be very thoughtful and mindful about the partners that we have. And so, yes, we do want to move fast. We want to be very transparent and very open, but we also want to be very careful about how much information we share, because so much of the work we're doing is still work in progress. We're still thinking about it. We don't want to rush into it. We're still thinking deeply about what kind of laws we are adopting. I mentioned 2 of them. There'll be way more as GMC grows. But if I start telling you we're thinking about this type of tech policy right now, it could very well be the case that in a month we've pivoted because we're open to new information, new science, new advice. And then what you will see and what you will base your information on, which is right now, might no longer be relevant. And we have to be careful and manage that quite sensitively. And so my answer is, it isn't because we don't want to share information, and it isn't because we don't want to build that trust. It is also a function of the rate at which we want to manage and grow while being careful and mindful to making sure that the information is accurate and finalized and really well thought out. So it's a little bit of a balance that we're taking care of.
Thank you very much.
Let me add to what just Rabsel shared, but as a Bhutanese perspective. So these are questions that a lot of Bhutanese have as well. But I come from an entrepreneurial space from within Bhutan. What GMC has basically unlocked is, for example, when Loden was trying to set up this Loden Tewa Fund, 1 month before, the fund management rules and regulations within the country were pretty restricted. And that was because of the development paradigm that Bhutan decided to have before. Without the infrastructure, without actually really having anything in GMC at the moment, it has given the hope, a pathway for people at least pursuing innovation and entrepreneurship within the country to start thinking there is hope, there is something bigger. So the type of discussions that Loden Tewa we had was, okay, so we're trying to set up an accelerator and a venture fund. Fine, the regulation says we can set up an accelerator. But the fund management rules and regulations were not necessarily conducive. So then we're like, can we take this Loden Tewa fund to GMC and establish it there? So the narrative becomes totally different. I think this is something that I wanted to share here. It has given a lab, a testing lab for innovation and entrepreneurship to move faster in Bhutan. I just wanted to add this.
We see the GMC as a catalytic force for the larger transformation in Bhutan. And what Sangay is outlining, I think, is that that catalytic force has already started. The very idea of the GMC has spread the seeds in Bhutan already for transformation. And so it has to happen in tandem. And that's why I was talking about a feedback loop. And so whether it is the new FDI policy that Bhutan has, whether it is the 10X journey, the new 21st century economic roadmaps that the government of Bhutan has already ideated and is implementing. In many ways, I would say that these are also in conjunction, at least, with the GMC's approach to transformation for the country. So it has to be a catalytic force. We cannot think of it independent away from Bhutan. The success of the GMC must translate into the success of Bhutan. In fact, when I work for GMC, Bhutan is always in my front. It's not an afterthought. I always think about Bhutan first, and through GMC, how can we improve and develop Bhutan? But back to your point, building trust. And building trust has to happen in person. Building trust is where GMC team members have to go and meet in person the Bhutanese stakeholders. And as much as I enjoy being in Europe, I can't wait to go back to Bhutan and meet with the college students and the high school students and the monks and the businessmen, because that trust has to be built in person. I have to spend time with my fellow Bhutanese to explain to them in detail. And yes, we can publish press releases and information and interviews, but I believe that the best way to do it is through interactions such as this. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to build that trust as time goes on. We're just 1.5 years into this big vision.
So this is on. So there's an online question about a slightly different topic, but still related to GMC, whether you have self-awareness groups in GMC, whether you are interested in methods that integrate Eastern and Western mindfulness, body, mind, that integrates spirituality and psychology, or rather it's a one-way thing, giving just the opportunity for Western people to learn happiness from you, like a kind of self-awareness tourism.
So there's multiple things there that I think for me is, one, I see the GMC as, and maybe this is the communication side of me coming out, but I like to call it the city of bridges. The GMC has 36 rivers and streams in its geography. And because of that, and because we want to preserve its environment, we want to build a lot of bridges. And because we're building a lot of bridges, some of them very functional actually, and some of them very iconic, the airport being one of them, it goes over a river actually. Because of that, I love the idea that the GMC is a city of bridges. And it's a city of bridges because it will also be a place where we harmonize values and ideas. So it's definitely not one way, it's two-way. Because it'll connect Bhutan to the world, it'll connect the world to Bhutan quite physically in the case of the airport. But the idea is, how can we be that bridge for harmonizing the best with the purity of intention that is there? How can we bring in the best values? And this is why we have conversations in Bhutan around how do we preserve our culture? And it's a fair question to ask. But culture is dynamic, we know that. But our values must be preserved. And the GMC is going to do that. And again, we can have conversations about cross-national happiness. My point being that from the very design of the GMC, it is underpinned with the values of openness, of collaboration. The GMC is our invitation to co-create our future together. And if you have that as a design principle, then very much so, the idea is that we want to co-create how the GMC will be built. And therefore, the Bhutanese team members within GMC, we have to keep a very open mind on how we work, how we build, how we collaborate, how we lead, I would say. And to that extent, it is very clear to me that it is not a one-track approach, one-way approach. It is very much about collaboration. This is very much why I'm in Europe, why I'm in Budapest, because we know that we have friends of Bhutan who've shown the track record of wanting to be part of Bhutan's journey, of wanting to help. So much of Bhutan's development has been a function and has been a credit to the international community over the last decades of friendship, of people-to-people interaction. And with GMC, we will only enhance that relationship. So looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Agnes Zsóka. I'm from Corvinus University, and I like the spirituality idea very much. What I'm worried about is the environmental sustainability, actually, because flying is not sustainable, at least not today, and how you are going to deal with that if you are expecting 3-4 million people per year, as you mentioned, coming in by flight. How are you going to preserve the environment? What is this negative carbon footprint going to be in the future? Whose carbon footprint it will be? Coming from Europe is the tourist carbon footprint, not Bhutan's carbon footprint. So how are you going to preserve the environment which you could preserve by now when having such a huge project? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great question. I think for small countries, it's so difficult to make decisions because the trade-offs are always so big. The opportunity costs are always so big. And Bhutan has always been kind of at the forefront of looking at how we can have balanced growth. That's what cross-national happiness is about. Cross-national happiness is fundamentally on these 4 pillars of preserving the culture, protecting the environment, focusing on good governance, but also economic growth, sustainable, kind of balanced economic growth. And Bhutan, over the last couple of decades, has done a fantastic job in preserving our culture, in protecting our environment, in good governance, and being a peaceful country. But we can be self-critical in terms of the economic development of Bhutan. And the GMC, in many ways, is a recalibration of cross-national happiness so that there is a bit more focus on economic growth. I've had many tourists who've come to Bhutan who tell me, Rabsel, your country is so beautiful, never change. Just stay as you are, never change. That's nice from the outside. It reminds me of this Calvin and Hobbes, I don't know if you know that comic strip. It's one strip where he's inside the house, it's snowing outside, it's very cold outside. And he says, what a beautiful night. The snow is so beautiful at night. And his friend Hobbes says, yes, if you're inside the house in a warm room, it's very nice. If you're outside, it's freezing, it's cold, you're dying. And so in Bhutan, for Bhutanese, there is these trade-offs, no doubt about it. But I don't want to romanticize the difficulties. I don't want to romanticize the poverty, the struggles that we have, the economic growth that we need in Bhutan. And so with GMC recalibrating cross-national happiness and looking at focusing a bit more on economic growth, there are tough decisions that we need to make. But is not just that we are saying we want to go full out capitalistic. We don't have an issue with capitalism. What we're saying in Bhutan and with GMC is how we achieve that capitalism. We believe that there is a middle path. And so specifically for tourism and for the airport, we say, well, GMC must be 70% forest cover at the least. So we've increased the bar actually, because in Bhutan it's 60%. We've built it so that it's climate change resilient in terms of its infrastructure. We preserve the biodiversity hotspot, as I said. The Himalayan black bear, the golden langurs, the Bengal tigers, we'll maintain those endangered species. The elephant corridors. Right? But for the airport, how can we also look at sustainable fuel? How can we make sure that the tourism that comes into GMC is what we call high value, low volume? So here there's an issue of volume, because you would say, well, how do you have high value, low volume if you're bringing in 1 million plus people? I think it comes down to the quality of the tourists. Are we bringing in tourists or passengers who are responsible? Or are we just bringing in big numbers for the sake of big numbers? Do these tourists who come into Bhutan provide real multiplier effect into our economy? Positive impact. Do they actually bring in positive impact? I can be very critical sometimes about what we currently have in Bhutan, high value, low volume, but in which areas? Or is it just a price mechanism, etc., etc.? I mean, that's a whole conversation we can have later. But the short answer here is, as much as possible, we want to find a balance without having to swing the pendulum too far left or right. And we believe that for the GMC to succeed in many of its other areas, access and connectivity is extremely key. And the airport is a foundational, transformational, catalytic infrastructure that we need. But how we build the airport and how the airport will function is what will be able to differentiate us from other projects of such nature. So it's a little bit not about what we need, but how we're going to make it happen that will differentiate the mindfulness city. But happy to have a one-on-one conversation that can go a bit deeper into the technical side. I'm also aware that there should be more questions for Loden Foundation, because I'm also very close to the Loden Foundation, being a former Loden Foundation entrepreneur myself, and I still see myself as a social entrepreneur with the Gelephu. I call this the biggest social enterprise in the world, led by the greatest social entrepreneur. So some questions for Loden Foundation, I think, would be relevant. Thank you.
Just on the airport, we had a question about the airport online as well. I hope the answer is given. So another question, please.
So thanks again for this presentation of this very ambitious project, which is envisioning really wisdom enacted if it's realized. And I've just a follow-up question concerning this challenge between the growth perspective versus the justice issue. Because how do you ensure that structures are there which are involving the participant of the population and in a meaningful way? For example, how do you ensure that the profits and the advantages and benefits generated by this project in terms of jobs, housing, services, infrastructure are distributed in a just way? So that it's not just about capitalism and growth, but also contributing to justice.
It's a great question again. Thank you very much. I think there's a clue in Bhutan. I think the clue here is how we're working in Bhutan. And Sangay has now taken a seat because the questions are all GMC, sorry. GMC is fundamentally a Bhutanese vision. And therefore, as I was saying, the clue is to look at how Bhutan looks at development. And Bhutan has a very strong social welfare programs, free education, free healthcare, even for tourism, part of the sustainable development fee, the $100 that you pay per night every time you visit Bhutan, that also all goes back to the government, who then plows it back into areas of infrastructure and areas of infrastructure development. And so there's a clue over there. And with the GMC, the idea is to continue to do that. But I think the differentiation with GMC and with Bhutan is that in Bhutan, if I may be a bit self-critical again, is that we tend to have a bit of a culture of entitlement because education is free and healthcare is free and there's so many subsidies. And because of that, we have a very strong social safety net. When someone faces challenges, they fall into this very strong social safety net. And because we're a small community, we're a Buddhist community, we're a collective society, people get taken care of. And so even if you don't have a job, you probably have an uncle or a cousin who will take care of you for a couple of months before you come back into the job market. But this is something that, for me personally, over the last couple of months, I've been thinking about what the president of Singapore, incidentally, has been talking about, which is that it's not enough to have just a strong social safety net. You must have a strong social safety trampoline. And so the idea is that if you struggle and you fall through the system and you have a social safety system, that the system must provide you enough support and training and capacity building, and the policies must support that so that you can then trampoline back even further higher. And so there's an element of how can we create the structures, the systems, the policies in GMC that doesn't just engender further culture of entitlement, as may be the case in Bhutan, but one where we are a little bit more innovative and entrepreneurial so that the systems in GMC will uplift you further higher. And so that's the design principle upon which we're starting. And because that is the initial design principle, policies, regulatory frameworks, projects, and programs will reflect that intention. But again, we're still early in the stage of building this whole new city. And that model that we have in GMC should then be ideally emulated into larger Bhutan. And so it should spread into larger Bhutan. But kind of very practically speaking, even if you look at the economy, the farmer in Laya, which is the highest mountain village that we have in Bhutan, he will ask me a question and say, what you're doing down there in the south of Bhutan, how does that really impact me? I'm here in 4,000 meters above the sea and you guys are building GMC all the way down there. How will I benefit? Or is it just my children's children who will benefit? And to him, we have to say, well, we're creating this whole new economy down there, one that is a little bit high-end by design. And therefore, the yak cheese that you sell in Thimphu, the capital right now, which you might fetch $5, how can I ensure that you're part of the supply chain? How can I ensure that you're part of the value chain? So that this yak cheese now fetches you not $5, but $50. And so by making sure that the rest of Bhutan is integrated into the economy of GMC through the value chain, through the supply chain, we immediately find practical ways to spread the benefit of the GMC to the rest of the country. It is critical by design that the success of GMC spreads into the larger country. In fact, we believe that it should spread into the larger region of Northeast India, of South Asia. So that's a very ambitious project, no doubt. We're very ambitious in Bhutan.
So we have a couple of questions from online. So let's continue with one. We have a question that is related to an Indian management institution who try to integrate the spiritual values in the curriculum. So the question is whether they can work with you to enhance their education and also contribute to your education system and other areas of sustainability as it could be considered mutual learning.
Yes, let's talk. Please email me at rabsel@gmc.bt. We're always open to any conversation. If there's any alignment in values, that's the first kind of gut check that I make. Is this partnership rooted in values that are aligned? Is it extractive then I'm not that interested. Is it purely transactional? Let's take a look at what the relationship could look like. We want to have partners who believe in the vision, who know that what we're doing is serious, who understand that we have come up with lots of strategies and tactics to make it happen, who've identified particular areas of value, of cooperation. And then in that case, yes, absolutely. Let's talk. And so the short answer is yes.
Just a sharing. Most part of the journey, the leg, it's been GMC and Rabsel getting a lot of questions. But then again, a learning journey for myself. So, just like how I sat here, I was sitting through a lot of these talks. And it's an observation I made. For example, IIM India, the question which was just asked. We're neighbors, like Bhutan, India, right? The very fact that there is a project like GMC reignites this excitement even within the region to actually start reaching out to Bhutan, because we've developed a whole new development paradigm. And this is when even a foundation like ours, who are actually looking into culture, education, and entrepreneurship, more specifically, very focused on social entrepreneurship, to actually start going on this journey, as in how do we actually ride this this opportunity, which is the intended purpose of GMC. And this is the realization. I'm sitting here. We have our Indian neighbor for IIM who could have reached out to Bhutan anytime. But then again, we're here in Budapest on this virtual call. Our Indian neighbor friend from IIM reaches out. Just wanted to share an example here.
Hello, my name is Árpád Kovács. I'm a landscape architect, and this project is really inspiring, and it's a really ambitious project. And I'm engaged in urban processes, urbanism, and I would have a lot of questions about this project, but I'm wondering in a very simple question, but as far as I know, Bhutan has 800,000 inhabitants, and as I know, this city would live around 1 million people, and yeah, one other very important fact that I'm in love in Bhutan as well. I was there 3 years ago, and to travel in Bhutan is not as easy as to travel, I don't know, for example, to India or any other countries. Tourism is more controlled, and I think it's a good idea or a good situation. I'm wondering if this city would be an international city, who would live in this city, because I suppose that the purpose is not that all the Bhutanese go from the mountains to Gelephu. So how is this in your vision?
Thank you.
Can I just add to this question? My question I had already when I visited Gelephu 2 years ago. Can Bhutanese freely and easily move into the Gelephu city, Gelephu Mindfulness City, anytime when it's up and running, like your case in the Laya person?
So the answer is yes. It's one country, two systems, which means it's still one country. So as a Bhutanese, you should be able to move freely around your own country. Of course, when you walk and you enter into GMC, we want to make sure that if you're not Bhutanese, that it's as smooth as possible. And so this is where we leverage a lot of technology to make sure that you're not waiting in lines and you're not having to deal with stress. So the short answer is yes, Bhutanese will be able to. We've heard rumors that in Bhutan that you might have to need another passport, or you need to have visas if you're a Bhutanese to come into GMC. I think it's clear that the one country, two systems model means that it's still one country, as I said. It's an ambitious, very ambitious project. And so when we're looking at population, we're looking at a large population. You're right, Bhutan is about 750,000 people. currently with a birth rate that is at 1.75, so we're not looking to grow too fast, it seems. And the city that is at a million residents will require foreign residents. In fact, it will require foreign laborers to build the city. In fact, it will require foreign capital to build the city. But we'll have foreign capital and foreign laborers and foreign residents within the Bhutanese ecosystem through a Bhutanese value system. That's what again binds us. That is our criteria for how we ensure people will live there. So there are two questions here. One is, how do you get that number? 1 million people sounds like a lot because Bhutan is less than that. And two, how do you select those 1 million people? My worry is not whether we can find 1 million people. In this world, with people who want to live in a country and a city of how I have explained it, I believe I can easily get 1 million. In fact, I'm worried that I might get too much and I'll have to push some off. So getting that number, I don't believe is a big issue. The issue, of course, is making sure that we have the infrastructure, the carrying capacity, not just the economic carrying capacity, but the environmental carrying capacity is one that is sustainable. But two, how we decide is, again, aligned with our values. And I've had people asking me, what does it take to get a GMC passport? Can I write you a blank check? And he said, oh, that already is a red flag. Why do you want to write a blank check? Getting a GMC residency is not going to be a function of just giving us some money. We're not only attracted because of finance. We want to make sure that the people who live in GMC reflect the values of GMC. And the GMC values are Bhutanese values, are Buddhist values, are gross national happiness values, mindfulness values. And that is quite easy to find, actually. That's quite easy to understand. You just have to have a 5-minute conversation with someone. And it's generally quite easy to see people who are aligned in that space. I mean, you talked about all the economic clusters. If you looked at just spiritual, for example, I believe I'll easily get more than 1 million people just on that space. So, yes, foreign residents. Yes, easily 1 million. And yes, we have a way for how we'll get them. I think this is, for Bhutanese, a larger question around how does Bhutan start thinking about how Bhutanese policies look like when it comes to immigration and when it comes to residency permits and visa permits, etc. So with GMC, again, we are that test bed for what could happen. And depending on what we learn in GMC and what works, we will then talk to our Bhutanese policymakers, and they may think it's time to reinvent. And this goes back to that initial question around how do we transform a country while safeguarding these value systems? The answer that we have in Bhutan is through a special administrative region, not just a special economic zone, but an entire region with autonomy in most of its functions so that it can test out new things. Therefore, be that catalytic force, as I said, for transformation in Bhutan. The imagery that I use these days is, for non-Bhutanese, I say it's like a tugboat, a small tugboat charting the course of the ocean of innovation and ideas, moving very quickly, and a tugboat that pulls this larger vessel of Bhutan, a vessel that is very difficult to move if it wasn't for the tugboat. In Bhutan, we're landlocked, so I can't use that example. In Bhutan, I use the example of a bow and arrow. I see GMC is that arrowhead, very sharp focus, very clear about where we're going. And Bhutan is the shaft that provides the balance and the weight so that it can reach far. And so that's how we will use the GMC as a means to a larger end, as a tool for Bhutan's larger progress. Thank you.
Okay, so there are actually a couple of questions, but they revolve around, in a sense, the same topics. So I try to kind of summarize them, and they all kind of highlight the perceived contradiction between economic development and these values that Bhutan is associated with, whether the airport has a negative impact on its neighborhood, whether the economic growth has a negative impact on local communities, or whether a hydroelectric dam destroys the ecological system around there. So kind of that, these were three different questions, but they, to me, appear to be the same topic in a sense. So if you can address that.
And thank you for consolidating all of that. I think that's very useful. A few months ago, I was asked to come and give a talk in Bhutan by this organization called the Gross National Happiness Institute Center. And the talk was about GNH, Gross National Happiness in Bhutan. And we had, I think, hundreds of participants, many of them Bhutanese and many from outside. The topic was on operationalizing GNH. What does it mean to operationalize GNH? And in Bhutan, we've been talking the talk. From the 1970s, our development paradigm has been gross national happiness. And we always talk, as I mentioned, these 4 pillars. And we have all these papers that we write and a lot of intellects who will talk about it. And that's been good for Bhutan. It's done a good job in terms of our branding. And it's something to aim for at least. So we have a North Star to focus on. But operationalizing GNH has been not the easiest path for us. It's very top-down, government-led, policy-based. This is also the reason why I became a social entrepreneur and why I have so much affection for Loden Foundation and Loden Tewa, because the work that they're doing is a bottom-up, private sector, entrepreneurship, CSO, non-governmental organization-led approach that is a perfect complement to development. So not just top-down policy government, but bottom-up. And that is true cross-national happiness, in my opinion. But what I believe we've always struggled with is economic growth. And this is why the word that I use is recalibration. Gross-national happiness that you have seen so far in the last 50 years of Bhutan has been focusing so much on 3 areas. But gross-national happiness, if you were to really operationalize it, also has an element of economic growth. And with GMC, what we're doing is we're just trying to balance that growth with economic development. And within GMC, we're calling it mindful capitalism. How can we have capitalism that is mindful? How can we bring in prosperity with purpose, with meaning? And this is the challenge. We're not saying we have all the answers, by the way. We're not saying we figured it out and just follow this particular model. We're saying at the very least, this is what we're attempting to do with the GMC. At the very least, this is the path that we are charting ourselves to follow. At the very least, these are our ambitions. And over time, we'll figure out if that works or not. So for me, it is very clear. Because I personally and Bhutan loves cross-national happiness, Gelephu Mindfulness City has to find a way to manage economic development while preserving these values. And it is not going to be easy. The devil is in the detail, as they say. And so when it comes to hydropower, and when it comes to the airport, and when it comes to the tourism policy and infrastructure development and the financial policies that we have, it is going to be coming down to the nuances, the technical details. And that's something that is important right now, because right now we're creating the foundational models. We're creating the philosophical aspects of the GMC. And if we don't do this right now, if we don't think about this right now, 5 years from now, these things might just become ad hoc. And so it is worth spending time and thinking about it, which is what we're doing in GMC right now. A lot of time, a lot of teams looking at sustainable, regenerative economies within GMC, because that will shape what eventually be the foundational models for the larger growth of GMC and Bhutan. Maybe I'll end with that. Thank you.
You have mentioned how much larger the area is compared with Hong Kong and with Singapore. Do you also plan, or do you look at Gelephu as some kind of a competitor to Hong Kong or Singapore?
No, not at all. I think the geography distinguishes us. And so, in fact, there's a lot of lessons learned. We can learn a lot from Hong Kong and Singapore and many other countries around the world on how we can build this hub, this economic hub that will differentiate us within the region of South Asia. And so not only do we not see them as competition, we're working with them to see how we can learn the things that worked out for them and prevent the things that didn't work out for them while being rooted in the Bhutanese values. In fact, I would go as far as to say, even with India, and India has many special economic zones and many regions that are looking for economic development. Even for them, we see this as purely complementary. How can GMC and Bhutan, being so small, but being positioned right at the front steps of India, of South Asia, of the larger Indian subcontinent, how can we be an entryway, a gateway to this region? And so with the success of GMC, we should be able to see more commerce, more trade, more investments, more people-to-people interaction, more tourism, not just for Bhutan, but for the larger region, especially of Northeast India. For those of you who know India, Northeast India is a region that has huge potential for growth. And how can GMC be, again, a catalyst for that growth? And so GMC is one that is very focused on collaboration and on complementary forces.